Hi guys,
Hey, hey.
this is Across Oceans with Douglas and Szilard. This is our sixth episode, and today we want to talk about immigration. First, I want to start with a personal standpoint. The first question would be like, what is immigration for you personally? What experiences do you have personally with immigration?
Um, my personal experiences with immigration is that I am an immigrant now, and um, I came to Germany in 2025 November, and it's a process. I mean, learning a new language is a process of becoming and learning about yourself. I feel like you can learn a lot about yourself through the process of learning a language. It's difficult because nothing is familiar. Um, you know, I think it can be bittersweet in some instances, but it can be a very rewarding process. It can be a very introspective process for me um, as an immigrant.
And do you feel like life pushed you to immigrate, like, or was it like a voluntary choice? Like,
It was. I mean, it was a voluntary choice. Like we're all making our own, decisions. Um, but yeah, I mean, yeah.
okay. And like you mentioned that probably there are positive and negative sides of it. Like you mentioned something, if I understood you correctly, like you have to let go of certain things that you cannot bring with you into your new life, into the new country, but you can also gain new inspiration or new impulses in that new environment. Like what are some of the things that you had to let go of?
Well, family, known territory, friends, um, yeah, a lot of stuff.
Mm.
Customs, the person that you used to be. I mean, but I ultimately feel like you still are the same person that you are wherever you go. You meet yourself when you get there, wherever you go.
Mm. And what are the new chances that you have in a new culture in a different country? Like what
Um,
like maybe you could become someone, I don't know, that you wanted to, or
I guess. I mean, I don't think that a place can ultimately define, like, you can become, we're all always in the process of becoming. Um, so I don't think, maybe you can change your viewpoint of how you see yourself or how you move through the world because of a different perspective, having a different perspective, which is, I think, is what I've had to experience. But I mean, you can ultimately become a more
Yeah.
I guess, elevated or more mindful part of yourself, being in a different place.
Okay. Well, I feel that you mentioned leaving the known territory, and the advantage of the known territory is that you don't have to think so much. You can just walk through your life in an automated mode, because you know everything, you know your environment, you know how to react. So the impulses that are coming at you are familiar, and your responses already tested out. So you know what is the safe reaction to a certain impulse, and there are less surprises. So it costs you less energy
Yeah.
to live through life in a known territory. Whereas if you are abroad and you don't, or abroad for example, but in any new territory where you don't know the rules, you have to figure things out, and that costs a lot more energy. You have to be really present, you have to be really actively assessing things and making conscious decisions rather than just doing things automatically, routinely. So, and that's where I see the chance, which is that you can re-evaluate your routines, your customs, and maybe you create new habits, new routines that are better serving you.
Could be. Could be. I mean, I think, yeah, you can. You can.
It sounds like for you right now the loss weighs more than the gain in this immigration situation. Am I sensing that right? Or
Positive. Yeah, possibly. I mean, with time, But I mean, it's not a full loss. I don't like to think of that, in a full loss. Like, I can travel. Like, I'm not sacrificing my entire life. And I think with technology and things like that, we can stay in touch with people. And I think it's important to be connected to community. Like, I think that's important regardless. But I do think that through the process of immigrating, I have been able to find a new sense of community with my class.
this is your language class, right?
Yeah, my integration course is really been a rewarding process, as well as an introspective process to interact with people from all around the world, from South Africa, Ethiopia, Ukraine, Venezuela. Yeah.
Well, I personally lived through immigration twice already. And I also experienced that, first I went to the United States, I lived there for a few years, and then I came to Germany, and I've been living here for for 14 years. And so I had to go through this process twice of learning a different language, even though I was fluent in English when I arrived. Learning a language at a language school or from a private teacher, even though I had like a private American teacher, and so I think I was already familiar with the everyday American expressions and way of thinking. Still, there were lots of surprises, and I was totally thrown out of my comfort zone, even though I knew that in the United States you have this grid system. The streets have this a shape, like not a circular structure. The cities do not have this circular structure like the European cities do. Like, there's the center, there's the church, there's the pub, there's the marketplace, and everything circles around that center. In American cities, it's like a grid system. It's a little bit more like artificially created, not through history, through centuries. So already just by going out to walk around, it gave a different. It gave me a completely different sensation. I lost my geographic sensation, like where I am within the city. Where is center? Where is the outskirt of the city? Like where am I geographically? So even that sense was challenged.
Yeah.
And also the bells, the church bells. I didn't hear that much in the United States. In Europe, I was used to hear the church bells, at every hour, at every half an hour, every 15 minutes. And then when there's a mass, or in the evening at 6 o'clock, there was a longer bell. And in the United States, I didn't hear any of that, and it was missing it terribly after a while. Or the other aspect that I lost and I was missing badly is, like, in Europe you can actually walk to someplace. Like you need to go shopping, or you need to see a friend, or you need to take care of business, whatever. You can walk. Mm-hmm. It is a possibility. In the United States, most of the time you need to take your car.
Well, in New York, you can walk.
Well, there are big cities in the United States when you can use the
Chicago.
mass transit. Yeah, that's true. But for example, in the city where I landed, I started living in Minneapolis. People needed a car, and the mass transit was not very frequent. It took a long time. It was complicated. So like that was one aspect. But I definitely felt also that I'm forced to reinvent myself in every single situation, because my routine answers would not work there. I had to learn different reactions, and this learning process gave me the opportunity to reevaluate. Like, was it actually good the way that I reacted before? Because I'm pissed because I have to learn something new, but actually, was it good at all that I was doing before in my home country? That I always felt this way when this impulse hit me, or when I always reacted to a certain impulse this way. Was it at all good? Did it serve me? It may have worked for that environment, but did it actually serve me? So it also offered me this opportunity, and I did feel after a while that living in this different culture and in this different environment changed my identity and changed my personality. And when, for example, I went back to Hungary after a number of years, and I started my life again in Hungary, I felt, for example, that's personally, doesn't have to be the same for everybody else, but I felt that if I wanted to be pragmatic and really logical, then I started thinking in English, because it helped me to be in that pragmatic, purpose-oriented mode. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I found that it was easier for me to avoid the psychological traps if I was thinking in English, because the language itself was void of these associations. Like, there's a childhood memory if I'm talking about this, and this childhood memory is influencing me. Mm-hmm. And then I'm having these weird emotions, and I don't know where they come from, and I attribute to these emotions to something else that may have nothing to do with. So so even the language helped me to put me into a different operational mode. And then when I came to Germany in 2012, that was a whole different process again. I was not fluent in German, Like I understood one or two words in a sentence, and the rest I just had to guess. I had to figure it out. And I started working immediately, and I had to communicate effectively. I had to understand people, and I had to make sure that they understand me because I was working with people. So I had to learn the language really fast, and it was difficult. It was hard. I felt like I was a kid. I felt totally incompetent in certain situations. I could have laughed at myself, and I felt also ashamed because I had a usual habitual identity, and I could not maintain that identity because I could not speak that way that identity would speak. I was speaking like a child. I was speaking like a teenager at max because I was still learning the language. People laughed at me when I said something funny. So it just gave me a totally different context in terms of who am I and what is my identity. And it was hard, but it offered me a chance to actually reevaluate things and be a child again and say, okay, is it such a bad thing to be laughed at? Well, I can be stupid every now and then. It's totally fine if people laugh at me and point at my mistakes.
Yeah.
And then I can actually learn. Maybe my ego feels hurt a little bit because I have to acknowledge the fact that I made a mistake, but it's a chance to learn something. So I think there is a balance there.
Yeah, I think balance is a good word. I feel like we have to find a way to not completely abandon ourselves through the process. I think with immigration, yes, it's great to. I have had great realizations throughout the language learning process, and like being laughed at and having to just cover, you know. But I think throughout the process, I'm also like learning more self-acceptance throughout the immigration process because, yeah, I mean, you are engaged with so many different types of people, and you are able to see yourself through different lenses, and yeah, I mean, it's a balance. I feel like we can learn new ways of being, but we don't have to sacrifice our whole selves,
Okay. I think it also makes a lot of difference whether you voluntarily choose to immigrate and to live in a different country, or when you're forced to. Like for example,
Yeah.
historically, people left Europe typically for the United States because they were so poor that they cannot feed their family, or they had to flee from religious conflicts, or for wars, from wars. So they were kind of forced to leave their environment, their known territory, to survive financially or physically. So that makes a big difference because even in that case, you come and arrive, you land in a new country with hopes to be able to create a better life, or at least to be able to survive. But on the other hand, there is a big loss. There's a big loss, like, and if the decision is not entirely voluntary, then it could be also painful. For example, there's a museum on Ellis Island in New York where the personal objects from immigrants are collected and are at display. And I almost cried when I was there because I saw little, puppets and personal objects, memories, pictures, photos, letters, children's books in all different languages that people left behind. And those are the memories, those are the feelings, those are the the connections that mean so much to us, and that also gives us identity and a sense of who
Right.
we are, and a sense of purpose and being. and
Right.
and and in some cases you have to sacrifice a huge part of that, not all of it, but a huge part of that.
But it's natural to, that's what I'm saying, it's natural to cling to those things and those experiences that made you, who you are at that point. Like, I think that is a part of the loss, is that, and that's a part of the grieving process in a sense of, throughout that, people hang on to their identities, people hang on to physical belongings, traditions, traits, things of that nature, because it is a jarring, could be a jarring experience having to do that within those circumstances. Now, if it's voluntary, that's a whole nother thing. But I understand through wars, through conflicts, through poverty, it has been um, it has been a process of longing. And I think it's New York. I'm glad you brought that example in, because New York is a great example of how immigration it is the immigration state, and I think it is wonderful how so many people have maintained traditions within their family, because this was brought over, this was passed over, from our great great grandmother, from
Mm,
from Ellis Island. So
yeah. But immigration could have also another perspective. Like my perspective is, my family is a history of immigration, because my grandfather came from Poland. He was a prisoner of war in Hungary. That's how he met my grandmother, who was born in Hungary, but her family came from Germany,
yeah.
and the common language was German. My grandmother was Swabin. These are people who wandered along the Danube south from southern Germany into Hungary, to Serbia, to Romania, all the way to the Black Sea. And so my grandmother spoke German fluently. She was bilingual. She was fighting with my aunt, her sister, in German when we were kids. I experienced that a lot. They did that so that we don't understand what they're fighting about. And they thought that fighting was not nice, so that's why they wanted to hide it from us, from kids. And so I grew up with this environment where I saw Polish cookbooks on my grandmother's bookshelf, but also German classics like Goethe and other classic authors. And so, and I heard stories from my grandmother how my grandfather spoke Hungarian. He didn't, he was dead at that time. I didn't meet him. I never met him. I just heard these stories. He died when my dad was 18, so I never had a chance to meet him. But I saw his paintings. I saw his personal objects in his shed, in my grandmother's house. I saw the pictures and the stories from my grandmother, that he had a funny accent in Hungarian. He used the language in a funny way. And so it was part of my growing up that you don't have to live in the same country where you were born in. That happens. That's totally normal. That sometimes people change their countries, they change their language. You can speak in a different language, and you are allowed to make mistakes in a foreign language, and it's not a bad thing. People laugh at you, and people love you for those mistakes. So,
Yeah.
you don't have to give yourself a hard time. for that, and that maybe that has triggered in me that desire to discover more than my home country. And first I went to the United States, which is, the country of immigration, historically. And I was fascinated by this chance of getting a second life, starting all over, maybe improving things, maybe do better this time. I was fascinated by that idea and opportunity. And then to come to Germany, and Germany was a totally different immigration story. The German country is completely different. Here, I didn't learn to be pragmatic. Here I learned how to be very detailed and very precise, because Germans, and even the language, kind of forces you to be very, very specific and very, very precise. And honest. I mean, the German culture, I think, teaches you honesty, because I admire the way that the Germans, confront themselves with Hitler, with the Nazi history, with Second World War. Like, they confront themselves and with their responsibility in that, and instead of trying to brush the dirt under the rug, they are trying to process these historical facts in an adult way, and I love that. I love that.
I do too. I think I do, coming from America, coming from this very prejudiced environment of the South where I was raised. I think that, we know there were two horrors that pretty much happened in the past centuries, and I think slavery was one of them, and then the Holocaust was another. And I think that I do admire how open and honest they are willing to be, to look at themselves in the mirror and say, that this was wrong. And I think they do have a lot more mindfulness as far as the leaders that they put into place. They do have a lot more mindfulness for the leaders that they put into place, because they understand that if you do make impulsive, decisions, and if you do, all hell can break loose. And so that's what I admire about them, specifically in comparison to the United States, where just last year you had Trump, who was trying to erase history. He was trying to erase the past. He was trying to cut funding from the the National African American History Museum in Washington, D.C. So there is a stark contrast between this erasure of mistakes in the past with America and Germany, which is another reason why I do appreciate the German culture, because they're willing to look and say that I was wrong.
But it's unfortunately, this is human nature, that every now and then people start blaming minorities for their problems instead of seeing the real causes.
Yeah.
And trying to fix them, because they believe the propaganda, and some political leaders are even try to manipulate people's minds and give them really simplistic answers to their problems, and then that could lead to false decisions. And even Germany, with that, what I said, that they are willing to be confronted with the past. The extreme right-wing political side is getting extremely and dangerously strong, and you can hear a lot of people saying things like remigration as opposed to immigration, remigration in German, re-immigration, which basically means that send them back. All the people who came here from a different country, send them all back, because they just feel that all their problems root in immigration. Like that's why they have difficulties in their lives. That's why they don't have enough money, or that's why they have job problems, or whatever, because the immigrants. And it is a complex issue, because if immigrants flood a country within a short amount of time, and the country is not ready to integrate them, then it could be dangerous and it could have negative effects. But that doesn't mean that the immigration itself is wrong, or we shouldn't do that. Actually, I think immigration is also a great tool to avoid wars, because if you force people into situations, you don't let in people when they see the country as a way of survival, then they will break into the country. So letting people make decisions and freely is actually de-escalating conflicts,
Yeah.
and gives them people chances to shape their lives and not get caught on simple answers like, minorities are the cause.
Yeah,
And
it
that's
does. It does force you. I do feel like I see a lot of that. I see the signs of, immigration is not a crime, in art, and it is a huge topic. And I do feel that, it can be either good or bad. People are willing to, in a sense of a personal experience of someone is forced to look within themselves whenever they do go to a new land. And people, I will say that on the receiving end of it, there are some people who might not be willing to look at themselves. They might not want to change. They might not want to accept newness. They might not want to accept that within.
Yeah, but life is changed. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, you can't just say, okay, I'm not gonna change, because then you are gonna be forced to change, because life is about change,
It is.
and and it's not a bad thing,
No.
But I can totally understand the perspective of the receiving end, like people who have grown up in a country, learned a language, learned a culture, learned how to work and operate within the culture, and then a horde of foreign people come in who don't speak their language very well,
Yeah.
who behave completely differently, who do not follow the social rules, and it's annoying. I can totally understand it. So that's why I said, like, immigration is good, but it has to be controlled. So it's not like, millions of people flood a country that are not ready to integrate them.
And pay respects to the culture of the land
Yeah.
they're immigrating to. I can
Yeah.
see that, and I can understand also how, from a financial aspect, there may be a drawback from immigration also, because you could see how new foreigners could be coming here and taking jobs. I could see that. But it doesn't justify the pain to it. We all have to eat, and I
Yeah.
feel like personally diversity is what makes the world a better place. Could you imagine if all of the people in the world wore the same things every day? Do you see how boring that would be? If we all
Yeah.
wore white t-shirts and jeans,
Yeah,
how
probably.
monotonous it would be.
Yeah.
I think immigration. I personally think immigration is a good thing, and
But I just want to go back to your point. You said that immigrants could take jobs from locals. Actually, research shows that it's not true. Usually, the jobs that immigrants take are jobs that local people would not do. And for example, in Europe, there are lots of
entry level jobs. Yeah.
entry-level jobs that the German people or American people in whichever country
And they need
they are
help.
local, they don't want to take, and these are the jobs that the immigrants do at first, and maybe even later. Like for example, in the United States, that's what I heard and that's what I learned from experience being there for a while, is that the first generation can never really succeed financially. It's always the second and the third generation who manage to, build up some wealth.
Yeah.
The first generation was always just struggling to making ends meet and just to get by. And
Well, they had to lay down the foundation, and it's not
Yeah.
easy to. Somebody has to lay down the foundation, and the foundation laying process is not easy, But shout out to them for laying it down. We have to
for
pay
their
respects
sweat
to.
and for their blood and for their hard work.
Yeah, because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have any of the things that we have now.
Yeah.
So I have to be grateful for my ancestors.
We had to stop the recording because the memory was full. Basically, we covered already a lot of topics, and we will continue this conversation because there's a lot more to this topic, immigration. But, in a different episode.
Yeah.
So, bye. See you next time.